Welcome back to Part B of our domestic violence special by Neighborhood Watch Brampton and brought to you by Brampton Focus. We now go on to our victim services, where Victim Services of Peel has been kind enough to allow us to have two of their very important people here to talk about what goes on and the services that they can provide. Beside me is Miss Rebecca Phillips. She's a crisis counselor, and beside Rebecca is Vernice Thomas, who is a high-risk support coordinator. Ladies, thank you very much for being here. You heard the testimonies, as you would say, of our two victims who are in Part A of our series. How indicative are those stories? I'll start with you, Rebecca. How indicative are those stories of what you've seen in the field?
It's not unusual that something like that has come across us. That's something that I personally, as a counselor, experience every day. And it's very unfortunate that we have to come across so many stories that are very similar in nature to women across the region of Peel.
Vernice, your title is High Risk Support Coordinator. That sounds terrible in a horrible way. I mean, when high risk, like, share with us, I mean, some of the stories and some of the elements that you've had to face in dealing with domestic violence that come upon your case.
So with regards to a case being considered high risk, we look at the various different comings or goings in a person's life. So we look at the financial piece, we look at whether a person has supports, or we also look at history and see if there's an escalation in the violence they've been part of. So those women or men are brought to my desk. I give them a call, I explain who I am. I've usually received the referrals from my coworkers. Thus then I will either go into the community to meet with them, or if they're able, they'll come into the office. We discuss where they're at, what they would like to go, and if it's one thing I could help them with here and now, let's work on that. So not necessarily is my involvement short term. I still get phone calls now 4 years later.
Hopefully with successful reports.
Exactly. Progress reports. Unfortunately, I do get the phone calls where they've been involved with another incident. And we look at getting them back on their feet, and I remind them I'm walking beside them.
So I'll give this one to you, Rebecca. What kind of services can a Victim Services of Peel supply to someone who is a victim of spousal abuse?
Well, there's a long list of services that we do provide. I'll start with our crisis center. So at our office, we have a crisis line that is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, I'm obviously not in the office all that long, and we do have a team of volunteers that does take the overnight part of it. We provide emotional...
So someone can make a phone call and say, my name is, I'm experiencing this, and someone will call them back.
Exactly. We provide emotional support over the phone. If they just need to talk and explain their story and have someone there to listen, that is where we come in. Along with the practical support, if they need resources in the community, we are that first connection after an incident where the police have been involved, or if they just need to call in on their own. We are a confidential service that will provide as much support as we possibly can in their time of need.
Some people would say that there is a stigma in reporting. Oh my God, I don't want to admit that something's wrong. I don't want to identify that something's wrong. Can someone speak to you anonymously and still be able to gain some support?
100%. We do work in partnership with Peel Regional Police, but that doesn't mean that when they call us, they need to report. They can call in anonymously if they would like. They can give their name and their full information, but we still will not pass that on. Whatever comes to our office stays directly in our office.
Vernice, there's a lot of people in the community. You don't believe that this is a reality, that this does not go on. It's just there's spousal problems. Everybody has arguments. That always happens. Why is everybody going overboard? Can you lend a little insight to that misguided statement?
Yes, everybody has problems in relationships. It's part of the growing. But there is a line, which was mentioned, that is crossed. So it's no longer me or providing direction to my partner. It's me telling, this is the ultimatum. For example, I suggest we have Chinese. Now it's, this is what is going to happen tonight, and it's going to happen at 6 o'clock, and after 6 o'clock, you're going to put the children to bed, and after the children to go to bed, you're going to do laundry. So it's not a two-way conversation. It's now strict directives.
So who supplies funding for Victim Services of Peel?
We have various different funding organizations, from United Way to the Ministry of the Attorney General to Peel Regional Police.
And generous donations from the public. And we are very thankful for all of the different funders and the donations that we do get.
If you were to look at the progression over the years, are we getting better or is it getting worse? Our population is going up, particularly in the Peel region. So as population goes up, obviously one would think there is more need. Are you seeing more need? Are you seeing more incidences of your services being needed?
We are now being accessed more. I would love to say I'd like to work myself out of a job. It would be great. But unfortunately, the cases that are coming through are more complex. The cases are like peeling away an onion.
An onion, yeah.
Layers and layers. We are seeing incidents where it has begun as childhood abuse and now it's adult patterns that are disruptive to their everyday being. So unfortunately, the numbers are going up, as well as the population is going up. But what we are seeing is more people are opening their mouths and saying, I'm not comfortable with this.
When we see immigration and when we see our population increasing, there are people who are bringing other traditions from other lands here that may not be on the same level. There are certain traditions and certain things that they believe and that they honor as being correct that doesn't necessarily wash with the equality that we have the privilege of having here in North America. How do you handle some of those unique cultural differences? Because to some people, it would be unheard of that a woman would have that voice. Whereas here in Canada, that voice is a 50-50 split. It's a partnership. How do you deal with that?
That's something that we do experience a lot, where women will come to us and they will think that this is something that's unheard of. We do have a program called the South Asian Family Enrichment Program, which is a big part of Peel. And this woman is excellent, and her desk is always busy because she is being that support and that encouragement and letting them know their rights and how it is in Canada and where the equality comes from, and just empowering women in general. And we try and do that as much as we can in the crisis as well. We don't understand where they come from, but we try to learn and to try and support them of what they've experienced and how it is like in Canada now.
When someone experiences domestic violence, what are some of the cases that you would give us an example of that we would never think of? Are there some instances that are obscure that we may never think of as an example, but truly is violence?
Presently, I'm working with a woman, and the alleged offender is her son. There are cultural aspects. So, for example, he believes, even though mom and dad are now divorced, that doesn't exist. She has been told by him that for $300, dad could have you removed. She now is wearing one of our pilot project Guardian pendants, which is a GPS tracking unit, for the fact that she is being followed. There's license plate is off the car. She goes to work. The car is sitting in the parking lot. So when you actually think that a son would behave this way to a mother, it's beyond.
Just to conclude here, Rebecca, will you just give some information to the folks out there how they can get in contact with you, and a little more information going forward, and if someone has something to say that they can rely on you guys?
So we do have, like I said, our 24 hours a day, 7 days a week crisis line, which can be reached at 905-568-1068. One of the things that I did want to mention is that we do have multiple languages that can be spoken. So whether that is we have somebody in the office that can actually speak that language directly, or we have an interpreting service that we can connect with within minutes to be able to provide that person the support they need in that language. Yes.
Vernice, I give you an opportunity, just a final statement, something that you want to say to the folks with regards to Victim Services Appeal?
I'd like everyone to know, you may know of your neighbor, or something's not right, talk to him and her. Pull them aside. Do not talk to them in front of the alleged offender. Just pull them aside, maybe even as you're talking over the fence or as you're walking the children, it doesn't hurt. The worst that person could do is not talk to you, but in your heart, you know you've imparted the number. Say, let them know there are people out there, we're willing to talk, and we will do. If not, if you have a concern, call us as well. And we will direct you on how to engage that person, even if it's just to plant that seed.
Vernice Thomas and Rebecca Phillips. Vernice Thomas, High Risk Support Coordinator, and Rebecca Phillips, Crisis Counselor for Victim Services of Peel. Coming up next, we're going to speak to the CEO of Hope 24/7. Please welcome to our discussion Ms. Laura Zilney, who is the CEO of Hope 24/7. She's been there for 6 years of an organization that's been around since 1993. Thank you so much for being here. You can grab the microphone.
Thank you very much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about what does Hope 24/7 do in the Peel region?
Well, we are a trauma center, so we work with all persons 12 years of age and older. We're also the designated sexual assault center for Peel region, so we specialize in sexual violence and intimate partner violence.
So when a situation happens, is this before or after the police or without the police?
All of the above. We get individuals who report and come to us after. We get individuals who never report and they move from abusive relationship to abusive relationship. Some can come through midway the court process. They can come through family attorneys. It really varies.
So I find this an obscure question. If someone is a victim and doesn't want to have their victimizer find them, how do you publicize where your shelter is?
So we're an office location. We're not a physical shelter location, although there are physical shelter locations that are advertised. They do have very good security, and it's of the belief that they need to be accessible, which is an interesting point because a lot of the other sexual assault centers don't advertise their address, but we do very openly. 10 Gillingham Drive, Unit 305 in Brampton.
So who funds Hope 24/7? And obviously, I would think 24/7, you're always open, there's always a voice, there's always someone there.
You would think so, and that was the case.
I'm just thinking, it's like 7-Eleven, right? No?
It was the case. We have had some significant funding challenges, not just under the current government, but under the former government as well. Under the current government, we lost $123,000 this year, mid-year in July. We got a phone call.
So who do you operate under? What is it civic? Is it provincial?
It's provincial. So
Okay.
the province has the right to designate an organization a sexual assault center, and there's 42 across the province.
Is there anything medical? Can you be under the medical designation, or is it social services?
It's social services, so we're funded through the Attorney General, and then we have funding through the region, the United Way, donations, and we have fee-based services as well.
What's the biggest problem you're confronted with now?
We see the level of violence and the complexity of it has dramatically increased in the last 18 months or so. We are working right now. We have 5 full-time clinicians, and they have caseloads of 18 to 25. About half of those individuals on their caseloads right now, we've assessed for being at risk of domestic homicide. There are a lot of factors that come to play into that, and a lot of barriers that were discussed by some of the other individuals, but the violence level is much more severe.
So, violence, what is that line? What crosses that violence? We're going to talk to a police officer in our last segment, but from your standpoint, from Hope 24/7, what is that line of violence? What have you seen increase? What is happening more now that did not occur or was not as prevalent previously?
There's much more profound physical abuse occurring, and there's also reproductive coercion, where the autonomy of the female is totally taken away. Their birth control is either thrown away, or they're forced to take it, they're forced to become pregnant or terminate a pregnancy, and we're seeing increasing numbers of that. And that, people think sexual violence isn't part of IPV, intimate partner violence, but it very much is.
So when you talk about complexity, that's something I never thought of, birth control pills, or just that aspect of it. When people are watching out there, they're going to say, well, how dare he take my pills away? How prevalent is that? I mean, the reality of that actually happening.
About 20 to 25% of women experience that, and that's why we've partnered with different services. So we have a healthy sexuality clinic in our location. Women can come and get free or low-cost birth control, testing, all of that. It's prevalent.
So what is the benefit of a woman coming, or a man, coming to Hope 24/7 to gain services? what can they look forward to from a help standpoint from your organization?
So they'll come in and we do a full assessment because we're a mental health agency.
Right.
We're all regulated health professionals. So we fully assess for a series of mental health challenges. And then they would engage in what is very much an intensive psychotherapeutic intervention. And we're a crisis agency, so we won't work with people for multi-years like other agencies do. But on average, we're seeing people between 22 and 25 weeks. And it's coming every week. It's safety planning. It's working out ways of moving forward in your life. If that means relocation, if it means changing jobs, re-educating, all of those things we assist with.
When children are involved, how complicated does your job become?
It becomes very. We do make regular reports to Children's Aid to ensure that suspected abuse is being investigated, but it is a fairly common occurrence.
If you were to communicate to someone out there, what would you consider abusive violence or spousal violence? What are some of the things that would come to your mind that you've seen cross your desk that other people may consider the room is still yellow, it's always been yellow, why is that any different?
I think some of the things were mentioned earlier, the financial control, controlling relationships and access to relationships. Social isolation is a really big component of it. It's something that we work intensely on at Hope 24/7 because it is a risk factor. There's the sexual component, there's the work component. It's not always physical. And it certainly doesn't start off always physical. And then there's the reproductive component as well, which is significant because you're controlling the woman's ability to reproduce or not.
You came to this 6 years ago. The Hope 24/7 has been around since 1993. What background brought you to this? You're the CEO, you're the head. The buck stops and starts with you.
My background is very varied. I am a board-certified sexologist, and I started off in that field, and I worked with persons that have offended sexually.
Define sexologist.
It's the study of human sexuality, all aspects of it, physical, emotional, biological, all of the components. And so I had started working off with persons that have offended sexually, wrote a couple books on that, and then kind of morphed over into the victims services component of it. And did the change management at the agency. So we're all regulated now. It's very unique in terms of a sexual assault center in the province, which means that we're trained and we use evidence-based protocols.
Is there a typical client that you see? Nothing's typical. Everyone is different. Every case is different. I get that. But is there something typical? Is there a thread that you can tell us about that you're seeing more prevalence of now that's happening in abuse cases?
I would say the longitudinal nature of the abuse is much more profound. So we use an assessment.
You're talking about the length of time?
Right. And the number of individuals
Death by 1,000
involved.
paper cuts, you never know that you're bleeding.
Yes. And we do an assessment called the Adverse Childhood Event Scale. And we know that anybody who scores a 5 or more is going to have significant relational issues. That's the research, because they've experienced such trauma in their childhood. And so we link these components together as part of the treatment.
What is your funding base? And if someone wants to get involved, how can they? And who should they make a phone call to say to support your organization?
Well, you can contact the AG, Carolyn Maroney, the mayors of...
AG, that's the Attorney General.
The Attorney General. The mayors of Brampton...
Of Ontario, I'm sorry.
Yes, of Ontario. The mayors of Brampton and Mississauga have already written her in support of us to no success. You can always contact the Premier. He is a man of the people, and he has his cell phone number listed online if you want to text him. And just lobby your local MPPs, because our funding is seriously declining, and there are clear intimations that it's going to decline further.
So last point, if you don't mind, speak to the folks at home and tell them why they should get in contact with you if they believe they've experienced sexual or spousal abuse or any abuse, and how you will help them.
This can be the most difficult decision that you're ever going to make, is to reach out for help. And I want you to know that Hope 24/7 is a safe space. We're here for you when you need it and how you need it. We'll work with you as long as you need to make sure that you're safe. It just takes that initial phone call. You can reach our office at 905-792-0821 or our crisis line at 1-800-810-0180.
Laura Zilney, thank you very much, CEO of Hope 24/7. We'd also like to say thank you to Victim Services of Peel, Rebecca Phillips and Vernice Thompson. You're watching the conclusion of part 2. Coming up next, part 3. We're going to discuss with a Peel Regional Police Officer and Nicole Sandroni, who was the person who put this whole thing together on behalf of Neighborhood Watch Brampton. I'm Michael A. Charbon. Look forward to seeing you in our final segment.